office. Put it in writing. That was it. No venom, no flair, just boundaries. Because Nathan wasn't playing chess anymore. He was operating in a different language entirely. He wasn't looking for a seat back at the table. He owned the table. And now he was charging rent. The real sting came minutes later when Tanya forwarded a buried email chain she'd found during a cleanup. It was from 2 weeks before the summit. A private thread between Kane and a junior exec titled Legacy Luggage. In it, Kane had written, "We'll phase Ward out after Q2. His methods are outdated, his ego's too quiet to fight back. Once he's out, we'll reassign the code and rebrand the stack. No one audits architecture anymore." Tanya didn't redact it. She didn't need to. She just sent it to Nathan with one line. "Figured you should see what your silence meant to them." He read it once, closed the laptop, didn't even sigh. Because here's the thing about men like Nathan. They don't rant. They don't posture. They build. And what Nathan had built was airtight. The clause, the license, the access keys, even the backup redundancies, it all pointed to one inescapable truth. Nothing could move without him. And now, if they wanted so much as a bug patch to go live, they had to come correct. Legally, publicly, on the record. And the board? They were starting to realize that too. One director asked Kane, point blank, why was the only person holding continuity not listed in the succession plan? Kane had no answer. Just sweat, just stammering. And somewhere across town, Nathan watched the audit logs scroll across his private dashboard, each one a signature that the system still worked, just not for them anymore. They scheduled the board meeting for 10 a.m. sharp, but half the room was already seated by 9:30, stiff-backed and silent. The tension strung so tight you could have tuned a violin to it. Kane looked like a man halfway through an anxiety attack he didn't have time to finish. He was sweating under his suit, tapping the table with a pen like it owed him something. Legal sat to his left, procurement to his right, and across the screen, dead center, was Nathan. He didn't dress up. No blazer, no background filter, just a crisp black Henley bookshelf behind him, steam curling up from a mug that read, "No, I won't fix your Wi-Fi." To his left was a woman in a slate gray blazer, his counsel. To his right, his silence. The room shifted the moment his camera clicked on. Not because he said anything, because he didn't have to. The chairman welcomed him, cautious. "Mr. Ward, we appreciate you joining us. We're hoping to resolve this quickly and amicably." Nathan gave a single nod. "Then let's be precise." What followed wasn't a conversation. It was a clinic. Nathan spoke in clean, clipped sentences, each one landing like a chisel strike. He pulled up the original consulting retainer, showed the time-stamped escrow clause, walked them through the chain of custody from the day he onboarded the first engineer to the moment the compliance triggers tripped post-termination. He showed the reversion notice, the license lock, the failed audit logs, every detail backed by documentation. Kane tried to interrupt twice. Both times, the board shut him down. Then Nathan leaned back and said it, flat and factual. "This isn't about revenge. It's about ownership, attribution, and lawful continuity. I'm not interested in returning to the company. I'm here to resolve breach." His lawyer passed a document into frame. Nathan continued, "I'm offering full IP buyback under new licensing terms, a reactivation fee to cover breach-related damages, and a public correction of record acknowledging my firm's role in architecture and execution." The room was quiet until one of the engineers, Diego, who dialed in silently, dropped a shared folder into the meeting chat. It was labeled "R version March logs, OSH critical builds." Inside, a full commit trail showing every major system overhaul, code deploy, and critical module had been pushed from one source, Nathan's firm, not corporate. His. The CTO exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a week. One board member asked, "How did we not see this?" Nathan didn't answer. Didn't need to. The logs were the answer. The paper trail had always been there, just buried beneath layers of ego and assumption. Kane had built a narrative. Nathan had built the damn thing that ran it. The chairman folded his hands. "And if we reject?" Nathan looked straight at the camera. "Then the license remains in escrow, the compliance flags remain open, and the contract remains non-viable." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply returned the terms that had been violated, clean, cold, and signed in ink. Kane opened his mouth, but the general counsel raised her hand. "We recommend acceptance," she said flatly. "The federal auditors are already asking questions." The vote wasn't close. 7-1. Kane was the lone dissent. The silence after was heavier than his signature when they passed the resolution across the table. Nathan didn't smile. He just said, "I'll forward the updated key within the hour." Then he muted his mic. The board watched as he reached off screen, picked up his mug, and took a long, measured sip. Game, set, terms. The board's decision was final, but Kane clung to the fantasy of reversal like a man handcuffed to a sinking ship. He stormed out of the boardroom that morning, slammed his door, and started firing off emails, internal reviews, HR inquiries, noise. He called the move a concession to theatrics in one thread, hostage negotiation in another. But none of it mattered. The ink was drying, the clauses were binding, and the clock was out of time. Then came the meeting request. Not from Nathan, from the federal procurement officer tied to their $175 million contract. A name that made legal's eyes widen and the CFO stop mid-sentence. Janice Holm, Senior Procurement Liaison, U.S. Infrastructure Modernization Bureau. The request was simple. "We'd like to understand the recent continuity disruption and verify the credentials of your restored custodian." Translation: "We saw the license logs. We know the name isn't yours. Explain." Kane didn't attend the meeting. He wasn't invited. It happened behind a sealed door with legal, the CEO, the board's compliance liaison, and Nathan, who joined via video. Same bookshelf, same calm. When Janice asked about the resolution, Nathan didn't elaborate. He simply shared a signed PDF of the new consulting terms, effective immediately. The core of the agreement was quiet, but sharp. Nathan's firm would retain consulting oversight on all infrastructure implementations tied to the original architecture. No build, deploy, or modification could proceed without formal approval. Any future dismissal of the custodial role, contractor or not, must undergo external legal review and be disclosed to relevant federal partners. No later than 14 calendar days prior to termination. Violations would trigger automatic license reversion and a full audit. It wasn't just a job. It was a leash, wrapped not around Nathan's neck, but theirs. They signed. There was no ceremony, no apology, just signatures. Then Nathan emailed the new license key, verified it went live, and closed the call without a single wasted word. Back inside the company, the change was instant. The systems hummed again. The audit logs cleared. The red alerts faded to green. Teams could breathe. But the mood had shifted. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. It wasn't a win. It was order, restored by the man they'd tried to erase. Kane held out longer than anyone expected. 3 more days of bluster and quiet tantrums until the board asked him to take a temporary leave of absence pending role reassessment. He didn't pack his office, didn't send a goodbye. He just vanished. The next morning, the company issued a statement. "We acknowledge the vital role Mr. Ward and his continuity team played in the success of our modernization program. We are grateful for their expertise and partnership moving forward." Nathan didn't share it, didn't repost. He just saved a PDF copy, archived it in a folder labeled Paper Trails, and went back to work. There were no parades, no champagne, just the sound of a system doing exactly what it was built to do, under the watch of the man who built it. The office Kane once ruled over with performative charm and hallway ambushes was quiet now, not somber, corrected. His name vanished from the org chart overnight, not fired, technically. Reassigned to strategic advisory, the memo said. But everyone knew what that meant. No desk, no door, no input. Just a severance plan duct-taped in HR's back drawer until the silence became permanent. A week later, a package arrived at the executive floor. Thin, square, and wrapped with the same surgical precision Nathan had applied to everything else. No card, no memo, just a framed 8.5 AG11 printout. At the top, the words Kane had barked in that conference room weeks ago. "The team stays, you go." Beneath it, in stark black Helvetica, the license hash that triggered the system lockdown. And below that, Nathan's signature, dated, verified. I watched the CEO stare at it for a full minute, like it was a relic from a war he'd tried to pretend never happened. He didn't hang it, just placed it flat on the table like a warning label for ambition gone blind. Nathan never returned to the building, never asked for a final walkthrough or a closing meeting. He didn't need closure. He had structure, the kind written into contracts, guarded by keys and immune to spin. He didn't post victory threads, didn't tweet subtweets. The system worked. That was enough. But word travels in this industry, and the firm that had once tried to poach Nathan quietly reached back out, this time as a client, not a competitor. They didn't ask him to join their team. They hired his firm. Full stack deployment advisory, infrastructure compliance, continuity design, 6-month retainer renewed on day one. He walked into their offices one gray Monday morning, calm as ever. No grand entrance, no speech, just a laptop bag and a mind like a loaded chessboard. I asked him later why he agreed to take them on after all that. He didn't answer right away, just glanced out the window, watching the light shift across the parking lot like time itself was sinking to his tempo. Then he said it, soft but final. They thought leadership meant control. I built something worth following.